The price of trusting the wrong person as a friend can be the costliest mistake of all. In Eden, trust was a currency more valuable than money, earned only through respect, loyalty, and the slow test of time. Swift River flowed through the quiet community, carrying a constant melody, an anthem of rural tranquility. High upon its banks lived a man whose well-being rose and fell with the currents of two bonds, one with his girlfriend, the other with his closest friend. Together they felt like family, steady as the river below, until one secret swelled like a flood and swept it all away. While Swift River shifted with the weather, fast and furious after storms, slow and murmuring under the sun, the street of Eden carried the spirit of its people. At its heart stood a small building with plywood walls and a tin roof. It housed a bar and gambling den, both notorious and beloved, depending on whom you asked. Above the entrance, beneath the soft buzzing glow of a single bulb, hung a hand-painted sign that read, "Luther's Place," in chipped white lettering. It wasn't much to look at, just a few stools, worn tables, and a small sound system that only played CDs. But the reggae, dancehall, and ska gave the place a pulse, and the people gave it a soul. At Luther's Place, dominoes slammed like thunder, spliffs smoked in lazy spirals, and laughter tangled with arguments. On bingo nights, numbers echoed like auctions, hopes flickering across faces lit by a single bulb. It was more than a bar. It was a sanctuary where secrets were traded, grudges simmered, and forgiveness sometimes found a way. The walls carried the weight of stories, and outside, the river seemed to listen, carrying it all downstream. And at the center of that soul was Luther. Tall, dark-skinned, and lanky, Luther had grown up in the heart of the community, the son of a farmer and a market woman, rooted in the soil and the bustle of trade. From his maternal grandfather, he'd inherited a two-bedroom house and a small plot of land high up on the riverbanks. With nothing but grit, vision, and his own two hands, he built a bar just steps from home. It wasn't glamorous, no chrome, no flash, but it was genuine, and every inch of it spoke of him. Lawna, his girlfriend, ran the bar with him. She was fire to his earth, quick with a comeback, sharp as a pin, beautiful in that effortless way that made men go tongue-tied and women watch her with a mix of envy and awe. Before she moved in with Luther, she'd tended bar at her parents' place. At Luther's Place, she brought the spark. Laughter followed her, so did respect. Patrons often said the place lit up when she walked in. And she brought love, quiet but fierce, the kind of love that poured a drink, just how you liked it, remembered your mother's birthday, and never let you lose yourself, even when things got hard. Together, Luther and Lawna ran more than a bar. They held a piece of the community in their hands. For a long time, it was just the two of them, Luther and Lawna, moving to a rhythm that worked, slow, sweet, and predictable, the kind of life that didn't make headlines but settled deep into the bones. They opened the bar in the afternoons, closed it when the last drunk stumbled out, and spent their mornings in the quiet comfort of shared routines. It was simple, it was steady. One humid afternoon, on his way to Port Antonio to pick up supplies, Luther's car gave out near St. Margaret's Bay. The engine coughed once, then died completely, leaving him stranded under the heavy sky. He locked the doors, slung a towel over his shoulder, and started walking. A passing minibus gave him a lift to a local garage. That's where he met Ben. Ben didn't talk much, not then, not ever, but his silence wasn't cold, it was calm, the kind that made noise feel unnecessary. He moved like someone who understood machines in a way that bordered on reverence. Every twist of a wrench, every tightened bolt was done with the quiet precision of a man who found peace in grease and gears. Ben towed the car himself, had it fixed by the next day. With a slight smile, he said, "You're good now." He charged far less than anyone else would have. "You didn't charge me enough," Luther said, genuinely surprised. Ben just shrugged. "I charge for the work I do and nothing more. I'm a mechanic, not a con man or a thief." Luther nodded slowly. "I respect that." Their first fist bump crackled with something more than casual agreement. It was a stamp of mutual respect, a wordless recognition between two men who understood the value of honesty and hard work. Luther, never one to miss a spark of character, told him, "If you're ever down in Eden, come through. First drinks on me." Ben said he might pass through. Eventually, he did. At Luther's place, they sat and shared a drink. That drink turned into two. They talked like old friends, as if they'd known each other for years. The conversation flowed easily and naturally, like a river finding its course, unhurried, inevitable. Before long, Ben was showing up every night, slipping into the rhythm of the place like he'd always belonged. What began as casual drinks turned into a ritual. After closing up shop and freshening up, Ben would swing by and take his usual seat at the bar. Lawna would already have 2 bottles of beer waiting, neat just the way they likes them, cold. The conversation flowed with ease. They talked about cars, music, sports, women, politics, everything and nothing, with the comfort of men who had found something solid in each other. They became inseparable. Luther had always believed that real friendship was rare, a bond forged in fire and time, not found in passing. But that's what he had with Ben, the kind of connection that didn't need explaining. They were in their 30s, both quiet men with steady hands and fire beneath the surface. Different backgrounds, different roads, but something between them clicked. They felt like kin. Soon, Ben was practically part of the household. On nights when he drank too much, Luther insisted that he stay over. The spare room in the back always had clean sheets, and in the mornings, Lawna would fix breakfast like it was second nature. In the evenings, she cooked for them both, heaping plates served with ease, with familiarity, with something that felt dangerously close to family. To outsiders, it might have looked strange. A black bar owner, his girlfriend, and an Indian mechanic forming a tight little triad. But to those who knew them, it made perfect sense. They had a rhythm. In the quiet hours, the 3 of them would gather around the weathered wooden table, playing dominoes, sharing stories, and laughing softly, a timeless ritual of companionship and warmth. They weren't just friends, they were family. Their bond became something of a legend in the community. 2 brothers, not by blood, but by something stronger, choice. Ben had no family nearby, and Luther's home became his sanctuary, a place of refuge, of laughter, of shared meals and music, a place where silence was welcome, and the deep, unspoken trust between men filled the spaces words couldn't reach. Luther's world felt complete, and when Lawna found out she was pregnant, it felt like more than that. It felt whole. For the first time in a long time, everything around him was exactly where it should be. He wept the night she told him. He had always wanted a family, quietly, deeply, but over the years, that dream had started to feel like a distant echo. Too many long nights chasing stability, too many letdowns. Somewhere along the way, he'd stopped believing it would happen for him. But now, it was real, and he was all in. After 3 years of trying, Lawna was finally pregnant. Luther quit drinking, stocked the kitchen with healthy food, and cooked each meal with care. Every night, he rubbed Lawna's swollen feet, and he never missed a single clinic visit. His love was steady, quiet, unwavering. Ben stayed involved too. When Luther needed a break, Ben drove them. He helped with groceries, chopped vegetables, and fixed anything that needed fixing. He assembled the crib with calm precision, never complaining, never needing to be asked twice. The 2 of them moved like soldiers on a shared mission to protect Lawna and the baby. But with each passing month, Lawna grew quieter. She still smiled, still laughed, but something in her eyes had shifted, soft, distant, heavy. Luther blamed hormones, exhaustion. He never noticed the late nights she lay awake, staring at the ceiling while guilt pressed like a stone on her chest. In the dark, she whispered words she never dared to say aloud. "Luther, I made a mistake. Forgive me." But the words shriveled on her tongue each time. She told herself the truth would wreck him, wreck the life they'd built, wreck everything. So by day, she poured drinks and laughed with patrons. By night, she bled in silence. Each secret she swallowed left her hollower, her warmth draining into shadows until even her love felt like a lie she was forced to perform. Ben noticed the change first, not the laughter or the smile, but the way her eyes no longer met his when she thought he wasn't looking. The flicker of hesitation, a shadow of distance that wasn't there before. When she touched her belly, fingers trembling slightly, Ben's own heart clenched. He wanted to reach out, to say something that might bridge the growing silence, but words failed him. And so she carried it all alone, the weight of what was unsaid, the fear of what might be true, and the quiet hope that somehow everything could still be made whole. It was a rainy night when she went into labor. Ben was already at the house, eating dinner with them, when Lawna winced and doubled over mid-sentence. Luther dropped his fork, scrambled for the hospital bag, hands trembling. Ben didn't wait. He was already on his feet, grabbing the car keys, eyes sharp with urgency. The rain beat against the windshield relentlessly as Ben drove, wipers struggling to keep pace with the downpour. Lawna sat in the back seat, clutching her belly, breathing in ragged gasps. Luther rode beside her, murmuring reassurances. Lawna's fingers gripped Luther's sleeve as a contraction tore through her. Her eyes met Ben's in the rearview mirror, just for a second, but it was enough. A flash of something passed between them. Luther didn't see it. He was too busy fumbling for her hand, too lost in his rising panic to notice the quiet devastation settling over her face. At the hospital, they moved in a blur of paperwork, beeping monitors, and nurses with firm hands. Luther never left her side. For a while, Ben paced the hallway. Then he moved to the waiting room. Ben sat quietly, elbows on his knees, eyes fixed on the floor. Hours passed. When the baby came, it was with a piercing cry that shattered the hush of the delivery room. Lawna collapsed back against the bed, tears spilling down her cheeks. Grief or joy, she wasn't sure. Lawna stared at the newborn in the nurse's arms, chest heaving, hair clinging to her damp forehead. The world felt muted. Voices came in muffled bursts. Luther's voice was clear, soothing, and awestruck. "A boy," he whispered again, brushing a kiss to her damp forehead. "You did it." Luther felt giddy, breathless with joy. He laughed and wept at the same time, his heart bursting. A son, his son. She smiled automatically, but her eyes didn't shine. There was no mistaking the tenderness in her gaze, but there was something else, something edged in sorrow. The nurse handed the baby to her, and the weight of him, so small, so warm, settled in her arms like a promise she hadn't meant to make. She looked at his face, his dark eyes, the soft curve of his mouth. Her breath caught. Then, the skin was lighter, the nose straighter. The hair, already beginning to uncurl, was finer than it should have been. Luther noticed. The features were delicate, unfamiliar, not from his line, not his mother's chin, not his father's nose, not his blood. The features told the story, a fracture in the bloodline, not purely African, but indelibly marked by Indian admixture, and in that truth, something inside him shattered. He blinked, stared. Then slowly he looked at Lawna. She looked back, her eyes wide, wet, hollow. She said nothing. She didn't need to. Her silence was a confession. 1,000 words clawed at her throat. Apologies, excuses, please. But all she could give him was silence, the cruelest truth of all. Luther staggered back like he'd been struck. "No," he whispered, shaking his head as if denial could rewrite what his eyes saw. "No, no, no." His voice cracked on the last word, breaking like glass under heavy boots. Lawna turned her face away. The room spun. He left without another word, bursting through the delivery doors into the hallway and straight into the waiting room, where Ben stood pacing, eyes red, not from the spliff he'd smoked, but from worry. Ben froze when he saw him. "Yo, Luther." Luther didn't answer, just stood there, chest heaving, fists clenched like he was holding something in that might shatter if he let it out. His eyes didn't blink. Ben stepped forward. "Everything good, Lawna? The baby, are they okay?" Luther's blood boiled. He shook his head once, slow, almost imperceptible, fury surging, uncontainable. His jaw clenched so tight it ached. Luther's voice cracked through the silence. "Is he yours?" Ben froze. His mouth opened, but no sound came. Luther stepped closer, fists trembling. "Answer me." Nothing, just shame in Ben's eyes. Luther's chest heaved. His next words came like broken glass. "I trusted you." "You son of a bitch," Luther roared. Then he lunged. His voice echoed through the white, sterile corridor, bouncing off linoleum floors and silent walls. A nurse peeked around the corner, wide-eyed, then disappeared just as quickly. Months of trust, shattered in seconds. "You were my brother," Luther bellowed, shoving Ben hard in the chest. Ben stumbled back, catching himself on the edge of a chair. Ben staggered to his feet, speechless, struggling to grasp what was unfolding. Shame shame and guilt creeping slowly and visibly across his face. That was all Luther needed, a silent confession. He screamed, feral, wounded, raw, and launched himself at the man he had called brother, fists flying. Ben ducked the first blow. "Luther, wait!" The word barely left Ben's mouth before Luther's second punch caught him square on the jaw. Nurses screamed, someone yelled for security, chairs clattered across the floor, fists flew, bone met bone, months of friendship undone in seconds of fury. But Ben didn't fight back. He took it all, the wild swings, the blind rage, his body a stand-in for guilt too big to carry. His mouth was bloodied, eyes bruised and swelling fast, lips split, purple and puffed. His face was a wreck. Still, he didn't lift a hand. It wasn't surrender, it was punishment. And maybe, deep down, he believed he deserved every blow. Luther stood over him, chest heaving, fists raw and shaking. Somewhere in the distance, a child wailed. A gurney squeaked past. The normal life of the hospital carried on, indifferent to heartbreak. Two guards tackled Luther from behind, pulling him off with practiced force. He didn't resist, didn't speak. He just let them drag him away, eyes locked on the blood smeared across Ben's face. That silent confession burned brighter than any scream. Ben stumbled to his feet, blood trailing from his mouth, eyes wide with shame and fear. For a moment, he stood there, broken, breath ragged, gaze flicking between Luther and the gathering crowd. Then he ran, out the door, down the hall, disappearing into the night like a ghost. Luther sagged in the arms of security, the fight gone from his body, replaced by something heavier, something cold and hollow. Betrayal wasn't sharp anymore. It was dull, numb. The hospital hummed back to life around him. Voices hushed, machines beeped, but inside Luther, everything was silent. Luther was torn inside out, hollow. The rage had drained from him, leaving only the ache, kind that settled in the bones, in the silence between heartbeats. His fists were scraped and bruised. His knuckles stung, but it was nothing compared to the wreckage inside. He didn't ask to see Lawna, didn't ask to hold the baby again. He walked past the nurse's station without a word, eyes locked on the exit door ahead. Each step felt heavy, final. The sterile walls blurred at the edges, colors washed out, sounds muffled. Heartbroken and angry, he left the hospital without confronting Lawna. For weeks, he didn't speak. The bar closed. Rumors spread swiftly. The story spilt into the streets like a river bursting its banks, flooding the entire community. Everyone knew. The whispers followed him like shadows. In Eden, secrets never stayed buried. They drifted on the breeze, carried from mouth to ear, until every lip in town spoke Luther's pain. Some laughed behind closed doors. Others condemned Lawna and Ben outright. A few pitied Luther, but no one dared say a word to his face. He wandered the house like a ghost, moving through silence that pressed on the walls. The bar stools sat empty, the counters grew dusty, and the lights stayed off even after nightfall. Sometimes he stopped in the nursery. The crib stood untouched, the sheets still folded neatly, the mobile, above it, waiting to spin. He would sit in the rocking chair meant for midnight feedings, its creak echoing in the hollow room. He imagined the weight of the boy in his arms, the tiny fists clutching his shirt, a voice one day calling him Dad. Each vision cut deeper than the last. He didn't know what hurt more, that the child wasn't his, or that he had loved him anyway. The baby came home, but not to Luther's house. Lawna moved in with Ben, the man she loved quietly, the man who should have stayed in the background. She never tried to explain. What words could justify what she'd done? What sentence could break a promise? So she stayed silent, and that silence said everything. Luther grieved a living child, grieved the weight of him in his arms, the promise in his eyes, grieved the life he'd planned, the name already written in his heart, the trust that shattered like glass dropped on tile. The nursery stayed untouched. He couldn't bring himself to take it apart, to erase what might have been. He drank too much, cursed too much, thought about snuffing out Ben's light. Once he even drove to Ben's garage, but turned back before going inside. What could he say? What could be said? What he went to do was exactly what his late grandfather had pleaded with him to avoid, to honor the commandment, "Thou shalt not kill." In his mind's eye, he could hear his grandfather's voice, steady, calm, a tether in the storm. "Vengeance is mine, I will repay, saith the Lord." Do not burden yourself with revenge. Pursue what is righteous, what is constructive. Trust that divine providence will see to retribution. Luther clenched the steering wheel until his knuckles ached. The night air was chilly and still outside the car, but inside, his mind roared with all the things he wanted to do, words he wanted to say, violence he wanted to unleash. Instead, he breathed deeply. He turned the key and the engine hummed softly, like a reminder that there was still a road ahead, even if it was uncertain and dark. Time passed. Eventually, the bar reopened. Slowly, the regulars returned. Luther spoke little, smiled less, but he was still standing. One evening, Luther stood outside the bar, a spliff tail burning low on his lips. A white car crunched up the gravel drive. Ben stepped out. Lawna followed, holding a 1-year-old boy with curly black hair. Luther froze. Ben stepped out first, Lawna close behind, the boy cradled in her arms. "Can we talk?" Ben asked. Luther hesitated, his jaw working as though chewing stones. Finally, he gave a slow nod. They sat. The silence stretched until it felt like another body between them. Ben's voice was low, cracked. "I was going to tell you. Then I got scared." Luther's eyes never left him. "You were my brother." Ben swallowed hard. "All of it was real, Luther. The drinks, the laughter, the brotherhood. I never meant to betray you." Luther's jaw clenched, his voice breaking low. "But you both did." The words hung between them, heavier than fists, heavier than blood. Silence followed, thick, merciless, final. Luther turned at last to the boy, curly hair, wide eyes, innocent, untouched by the wreckage. "What's his name?" "Nathan." Luther nodded once, slow, deliberate. His voice was steady but jagged underneath. "Take care of him, better than we were." Ben's lips trembled. "I will." A long pause hung in the air, heavy as stone. Then Luther stood, his shadow stretching across the gravel. "Don't come back here again." Ben opened his mouth, but no words came. He looked down, clutched the boy tighter, and turned away. Lawna lingered, her eyes searching Luther's face for something. Mercy, maybe, or hope. He gave her nothing. Without another word, he walked back inside, leaving the night to swallow them. The bar was quiet. He poured himself a drink with hands that shook. The walls felt heavier, the air thicker. Everything had changed. The past was ash, the future uncertain, but he was still standing. He raised the glass. The bar was quiet. Bottles lined the shelves like mute witnesses. Luther poured himself a drink with hands that trembled, the liquid catching the light in broken glints. He raised the glass. To truth, to survive. He downed it in one shot, the burn sinking deep. Outside, the river whispered through Eden, carrying laughter, secrets, and betrayals downstream into the dark. Inside, Luther switched off the lights. The room fell into shadow, heavy and still. In the hush, his grandfather's words returned. "Vengeance is mine, I will repay, saith the Lord." Luther breathed them in like smoke, let them settle in his bones. For the first time in months, he let the silence take him. Outside, the river kept running, slow, patient, eternal, carrying everything Eden tried to bury. Luther let it take him too. True friendship is a fragile treasure, born of loyalty, trust, respect, and time. But even the closest bond can splinter under the weight of betrayal. And when it does, the hardest choice isn't vengeance or forgiveness. It's learning how to carry the broken pieces of emotion and knowing when to set them down. That is why we must stay vigilant, guarding the door to our hearts, and take care with whom we entrust the name of a friend. For trust, like the river, only runs one way. Once it is swept downstream, no current will carry it back. It is lost to the sea of betrayal. If you enjoyed the story, show some love. Like, comment, and subscribe to Word, Sound, and Story, where Troy Mackenzie transforms real-life experiences into meaningful, dramatic, and entertaining tales. Thanks for watching. Drop a comment and let us know where you're watching from. We'd love to hear from you. Bless up.